Rich woman screams at Keanu Reeves for touching her luggage. Then airport stops everything. The Los Angeles International Airport was humming with its usual rhythm of rolling suitcases, intercom announcements, and impatient travelers. At gate 47, a woman in a designer red suit dragged 3 oversized Louis Vuitton suitcases with a sharp attitude and an even sharper voice. Her heels clicked like warning shots across the polished floor. She was clearly someone who expected the world to move for her. "Excuse me. Yes, you don't touch my things." Her voice rang out like a siren, silencing conversations nearby. A man in worn jeans and a plain gray hoodie stood still, holding the handle of one of her bags. His head was slightly lowered. No one seemed to recognize him, just another traveler, unshaven, modestly dressed, soft-spoken, just another nobody. But it wasn't single quotes. It was Keanu Reeves. He had bent down merely to help her luggage that was slipping from the cart. A simple gesture, an instinct of kindness, but she exploded. "I don't know who you think you are, touching my Louis bags. These cost more than your yearly salary." A few people turned to watch. Most looked away, not wanting to get involved. Keanu simply smiled faintly and responded, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Joe's didn't want your bag to fall." The woman scoffed, dramatically wiping the handle with a tissue from her handbag. "People like you should stay in your lane. Don't touch what doesn't belong to you." A nearby airline staff member raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The tension in the air was thick and uncomfortable. Some passengers shifted in their seats. A child whispered to his mother, "Why is she yelling at him?" The mother didn't answer. Keanu didn't move. He didn't fight back. He simply returned to the bench he'd been sitting on, right next to the vending machine, next to an elderly man asleep with his mouth slightly open. No bodyguards, no entourage, no camera crew. Nothing about him screamed celebrity. And maybe that's why no one recognized him yet. "Is someone going to call security?" the woman demanded. "He might be dangerous." Keanu looked up at her gently, his voice calm. "Would you like me to step away further?" "I don't want to make you uncomfortable." The airline supervisor arrived then. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" "Yes. This man tried to interfere with my bags. He looks suspicious." The supervisor glanced at Keanu, hesitated, and then turned back to the woman. "I'll take care of it." Turning to Keanu, he said, in a louder voice than necessary, "Sir, please do not disturb other passengers." "I understand," Keanu replied, nodding. "I wasn't trying to." The woman smiled, triumphant. But not everyone bought the story. Near the seating area, a young janitor named Marcus leaned on his mop and watched the whole thing unfold. He squinted at Keanu, then blinked. Something felt off. He tilted his head, narrowing his eyes. Was that? No. Couldn't be. Just then, a child's juice box slipped from his grip and rolled toward Keanu's feet. The man bent down, picked it up, and handed it back to the little boy with a warm smile. "Here you go, buddy." The boy grinned. "Thanks. Mister." The mother of the child looked up and froze. Her eyes widened for a second. She opened her mouth to say something, then seemed unsure. More people were noticing now. Not the woman's rant, but him. He didn't react like a victim. He wasn't flustered or angry. He didn't bark back. He was centered, grounded, gentle. Yet the woman continued. "People like him are always trying to take advantage. I'm so sick of this kind of behavior." Marcus's curiosity deepened. He grabbed his phone and subtly snapped a photo of the man. Then, he opened his browser and typed, "Keanu Reeves Airport Hoodie, 2025. His eyes widened. The picture that loaded was almost identical. He turned to his coworker, whispering, "Dude, I think that's Keanu Reeves." "No way," his friend whispered back. "Why would he be here, dressed like that?" "I don't know," Marcus said, glancing back at him. "But look at the way he's acting. That's totally something Keanu would do." The supervisor had called for airport security by now. Guards began walking briskly toward gate 47. Keanu stood as they approached. "Sir," one of them said. We've been told there's an issue with your behavior around other passengers. I understand, Keanu said again, calm as ever. I can move to another gate if it helps. As the confrontation escalated, a teenage girl a few feet away was scrolling through her phone. She suddenly gasped, holding her screen out to her father. Dad, that's him, look. Her father adjusted his glasses and stared. No way, he muttered. Another passenger heard, then another. Whispers began to flow like a current. Keanu remained still. The guards looked confused now. One leaned closer. Sir, do you happen to be Keanu? Gently raised a hand. It's fine. Let's not make a scene. But it was too late. The woman, still fuming, noticed the shift in energy. What's going on? Why are people staring at him like he's someone special? A man near the boarding door stood and called out, because he is someone special. That's Keanu Reeves. The terminal fell into a strange silence. The woman's expression shifted, from fury to disbelief, to something else entirely. The louder the injustice, the clearer the silence of those who know better. The terminal had gone quiet and comfortably so. Passengers who were just minutes ago buried in their phones or half asleep in their chairs, now stared at the man in the hoodie. The whispers had grown into full murmurs, spreading like wildfire. Is that really him? Why would Keanu Reeves be here, alone? He looks so normal, but not everyone believed it. The rich woman, still flushed with frustration, let out a forced laugh. Please, that man is not Keanu Reeves. Are you all so desperate for a story? Keanu said nothing. He looked down for a moment, adjusting the sleeve of his hoodie. His body language remained peaceful, composed, and almost painfully humble. There was no trace of superiority, no arrogance, just patience. Sir, one of the airport security guards said, a bit more respectfully this time, can you confirm your identity for us? Keanu smiled slightly, then shrugged. I'm just a traveler, waiting for my flight. That answer wasn't denial, but it wasn't confirmation either. The guard scratched his head. The other one checked his radio, clearly uncomfortable now that things were escalating. I don't care who he looks like, the woman snapped, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Keanu. He tried to touch my belongings. Are we just going to ignore that because he might be a celebrity? A few passengers muttered in disagreement. Then, a boyno, older than 12, stood from his seat and spoke with the kind of courage only a child could muster. He didn't try to steal anything. I saw he was helping. The woman turned to him, stunned. Stay out of this. The boy's father stood up too. Don't talk to my son like that. The crowd shifted uneasily. There was a feeling, no, not just of awkwardness, but of tension. Something was wrong, and it wasn't the man in the hoodie. The janitor. Marcus, still holding his mop, stepped forward a little. He had a quiet voice, but a steady one. You're causing more of a scene than he ever did, ma'am. The woman turned to him, outraged. Oh, and now the janitor wants to lecture me. I pay taxes, your salary comes out of my pocket. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Even the guards looked shocked by the remark. Marcus just looked down, embarrassed. Keanu stepped forward for the first time. His voice was soft, but it carried weight. You don't have to speak to him like that. He's just doing his job. Oh, please, the woman snapped. You people always act so noble when someone's watching. Keanu's eyes locked onto hers, not angrily, but with a depth that made her take half a step back. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Kindness isn't for show, he said quietly. It's who you are when no one's looking. There was silence again, heavy. Still, then came the shift. A manager from the airliner, tall man in his 40s, with a clipboard in hand, pushed through the gathering. What's going on here? He asked sharply. We're getting complaints from multiple passengers. The woman spoke first, pointing again. This man has been disturbing me. Touching my bags, I've been harassed. Now everyone here is acting like I'm the problem. The manager looked at Keanu, then at the growing crowd. Do we have security footage of the interaction? One of the guards nodded. We can pull it from the terminal cameras. Do it. The manager said. The woman seemed satisfied until Keanu reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a boarding pass and handed it silently to the manager. The man read it and blinked. Then his eyes lifted slowly to meet Keanu's. "You're Mr. Reeves?" Keanu gave a soft nod. "I wasn't trying to make this a thing." The manager stepped back. "Sir, I'm so sorry. If we had known." "You didn't need to know," Keanu said, almost sadly. "It shouldn't matter." People around began to murmur again, but this time with a different energy. Guilt, admiration, regret. The manager cleared his throat. "Please, sir, accept our apologies on behalf of the airline." "It's fine," Keanu replied. "I'd just like to sit in peace until my flight." The woman, frozen in place, said nothing. Then something unexpected happened. Marcus, still holding his mop, was approached by another supervisor. This one from janitorial staff. "I just got a call," he said quietly. "You're being written up. Management says you spoke out of turn to a passenger." "What?" Marcus asked, stunned. "I was just trying to." "It doesn't matter," the man said. "They want you to clock out now." Keanu looked up immediately. He was just defending someone. "Is that grounds for punishment?" The supervisor shrugged. "I don't make the rules." Marcus turned, visibly trying to hide the hurt. "It's okay," he said. "I've been written up before." But Keanu stood up. Fully now. No longer the quiet, slouched man in the background. "I don't think it is okay," he said. "Not when the person being punished is the only one who did the right thing." Everyone was listening now. Even the woman who hadn't moved looked visibly uncomfortable. Her voice, when it came, was weaker. "I didn't mean for anyone to get fired." "You didn't mean for any of this," Keanu said gently. "But words have weight. Especially when they come from people used to getting what they want." Marcus tried to stop him. "It's all right, really. I'm used to this kind of stuff." "You shouldn't have to be," Keanu said. Another silence fell over the gate. And then, slowly, a quiet round of applause broke out. Just a few people, then more. Until nearly the entire gate was clapping, not loudly, but respectfully. For Keanu, for Marcus, for decency. It didn't matter. The message was clear, and yet, Keanu just gave a small smile and sat back down, next to the old man who still hadn't woken up. No speeches, no declarations, just silence. But in that silence, something had shifted, and the woman, now alone and unsure, realized that in trying to humiliate a stranger, she had revealed something far uglier herself. Some people carry pain like luggage. Others, like Keanu, carry it like a lesson. Keanu sat back down slowly, adjusting the strap of his backpack as the applause faded. The old man beside him stirred slightly in his nap, unaffected by the scene that had just unfolded. Around them, conversations resumed quieter now, more thoughtful. Marcus had left, escorted gently by a colleague. He didn't argue, didn't complain. He just nodded once, toward Keanu, before disappearing past the corner of the terminal hallway. Keanu leaned forward in his chair and rested his arms on his knees. He didn't smile, he didn't speak, but in his silence, something stirred, something old. A memory. 20-9 years ago, Toronto, winter. A cold so sharp it felt personal. A 16-year-old Keanu sat on a metal bench outside the city bus terminal. His coat was too thin, his fingers red and raw from the wind. His mother was sick again, worse this time. She had stayed home with a fever, coughing through the night. Her voice hoarse and weak. They didn't have money for a doctor. They barely had enough for rent. He had come to the terminal that day with one goal: to ask the bus manager if there was any kind of job available. Cleaning, lifting boxes, anything. He didn't care what it was, he just wanted to help. To feel useful, but the man behind the counter had barely looked at him. "You're underage, we can't hire you." That was it. No sympathy, no conversation, just rejection. Keanu had stepped back out into the snow. It was already dark at 5 p.m., and the wind howled between the buildings like it was angry at the world. He sat on the bench again, alone. That's when he saw her, an older woman, maybe in her 70s, bundled in a heavy green coat, was watching him from a distance. Her eyes were sharp but kind. She walked toward him slowly and stopped just a few feet away. "You waiting on someone?" she asked. Keanu shook his head. "No, ma'am." She studied him for a moment. "You hungry?" He hesitated, embarrassed. "I'm fine." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sandwich wrapped in foil. "I used to lie about that too." He looked up, surprised. She sat down beside him without asking. "I saw you go in," she said. "Didn't go the way you hoped, huh?" Keanu shrugged. "It's okay." She handed him the sandwich. "You don't need to be okay right now. Just eat." He took it slowly, like it might disappear if he moved too fast. It was ham and cheese still warm, and it felt like a miracle. "I've worked at this terminal for 40 years, she said. "Cleaning floors, scrubbing toilets. I've seen all kinds of people walk through those doors. Some come in with gold watches and leave with nothing. Others come in with nothing and leave with hearts stronger than steel." Keanu listened in silence. "You've got that kind of heart, I think," she added. Gentle, but strong. He didn't know what to say. He just kept eating. Her words sunk deeper than the cold. She pulled out a small red ribbon from her coat pocket. "Here," she said, tying it around his wrist. "When you think nobody sees you, when the world treats you like you're invisible, remember this." "You're not?" He looked at the ribbon. "Thank you," she smiled. "One day, when you see someone else who feels invisible, you'll remember this moment, and you'll know what to do." Present day, Keanu rubbed his fingers slowly, staring at the floor of the terminal. That old red ribbon wasn't on his wrist anymore. It had frayed and faded years ago. But he still carried a piece of it in his wallet. Always, he reached for it now, gently unfolding the corner of a thin leather compartment. Inside was a worn scrap of red cloth, no longer vibrant but still soft. He smiled quietly. From across the terminal, the teenage girl who had first recognized him was watching. She hadn't taken her eyes off him since the reveal. She nudged her dad again. "He's different," she whispered. The dad nodded. "He's not like the others." Keanu noticed their gaze and offered a soft nod. Then he stood and walked over. "I just wanted to thank you," the girl said shyly. Keanu raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For not yelling back. For not being mean," she said. He knelt slightly to meet her eyes. "Sometimes, when people shout at you, it's because something inside them is hurting." She blinked. "But she was awful to you." "People aren't always awful on purpose," he replied. "Sometimes they just forget how to be kind." Her dad stepped forward. "You handled that with more grace than I've seen in my lifetime." Keanu stood. "I just remembered what someone once did for me." The father looked puzzled. "Someone helped you like that?" Keanu nodded. "A stranger. A long time ago. Taught me that being kind when no one's watching is the real test." The father smiled. "Well, the whole world's watching now." Keanu chuckled lightly. "That's the ironic part." A few steps behind him, the rich woman was still pacing. She glanced over once, then quickly looked away. Her voice had vanished. Her power, to dot back in his seat, Keanu sat with the same quiet posture as before. Nothing had changed about him, except now, the world had shifted. He opened his wallet again and looked at the red cloth. He hadn't just remembered the lesson, he had become it. In a world that rushes past pain, one quiet act of kindness can stop time. The terminal had returned to a slow, hesitant rhythm. People whispered softly. Some scrolled through their phones, reading headlines already beginning to buzz. Keanu Reeves involved in incident at airport. Others just sat still, unsure of what to make of what they'd just witnessed. Keanu remained in his seat, calm as ever. No anger, no frustration. Just presence. The rich woman was now seated further away, looking anywhere but at him. Her phone was in her hand, but her fingers trembled slightly. Her pride had nothing left to hold on to. Near the vending machines, a woman in a faded blue uniform quietly watched everything unfold. Her name was Linda. She had worked at that airport for over 12 years, cleaning windows, wiping seats, picking up gum wrappers no one bothered to throw away. And yet, in all those years, she'd never seen a moment like this. Her eyes had locked onto Keanu the moment he stood up for Marcus. Not because he was famous though, she had recognized him, but because he saw what no one else ever did. The janitors. The invisible ones. The ones like her. Linda took a deep breath and walked toward him. Not fast, not hesitant, just steady. She approached without drawing attention. When she reached him, she didn't ask for a photo. She didn't even say his name. She simply held out a small bottle of water and said, "You looked like you could use this." Keanu looked up. Surprised, but not by the water. By the sincerity in her voice. "Thank you," he said, taking it gently. Linda smiled and knelt slightly so she wasn't towering over him. "I saw what you did, for Marcus, for that boy. For everyone who ever felt like they didn't matter." Keanu tilted his head. "Sometimes all people need is to be seen." She nodded. "Most people walk past us like we're furniture. You didn't." He looked at her, eyes soft. "Maybe because I know how it feels." Linda looked down at her hands, calloused, tired. She had never felt so noticed. "Would you like to sit?" Keanu asked, motioning to the empty chair beside him. Linda hesitated. That seat was first-class material. She was janitorial. She wasn't used to being invited in, but she sat. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Just silence. Comfortable silence. Then Linda said, "I used to dream of being a writer. Back when I was your age. Thought I'd change the world with words." Keanu smiled. "Maybe you still can," she chuckled. "Now I just change trash bags." "That doesn't make your dreams less real," Keanu replied. "It just means life took a longer road." Linda blinked, caught off guard. No one talked to her like that, like her life still had possibility. Just then, a supervisor passed by, the same one who had warned Marcus. He stopped, staring. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "You're not supposed to sit in passenger areas during your shift." Linda stood immediately. "Sorry, she's with me," Keanu said calmly. The supervisor blinked. Okay, but she was being kind," Keanu added. "You should try it." The man opened his mouth, then closed it. He turned and walked away. Linda looked down, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to cause more trouble." "You didn't," Keanu said. "You reminded me why I believe in people." She swallowed back a lump in her throat. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded paper. "This was a line from a story I wrote once. I never showed it to anyone." She handed it to him. Keanu unfolded the paper carefully. It read, "The quietest voices often carry the loudest truths." He looked up at her. "That's beautiful." Linda smiled, shy. It never felt like enough. Keanu folded it again and tucked it inside his wallet right next to the red ribbon. "Now it is," he said. At that moment, the terminal's intercom announced a new boarding call. People began to gather their belongings. But a strange stillness hovered near Gate 47. It was like everyone knew they were witnessing something more important than a flight. As Linda turned to walk back to her cart, the rich woman passed by. Their eyes met. Linda didn't speak. She didn't need to. But the woman, for the first time, lowered her gaze. As Linda reached her cleaning cart, her supervisor was waiting. "I saw you talking to him," he said sharply. "Yes, sir," she replied. Calmly. "I offered him water." "That's not your job." "I know. You're getting a formal write-up." Linda didn't flinch. Understood. Keanu had walked up behind them silently. "Actually," he said, "I'd like to speak to your management." The supervisor turned pale. "Sir, I don't think that's necessary." "Kindness should never be punished," Keanu said. "And if it is, maybe your system needs a better script." He turned to Linda and smiled. "You wrote one." With that, he gave her something small. A silver card with no logo, just his signature and a number. "If you ever feel ready to write again," he said, "let me help." Linda stared at it, breath caught in her throat. "I don't know what to say." "Just promise me you'll never think your words don't matter." She nodded, eyes filled with tears. Keanu turned and walked back to his seat. People moved out of his way without being asked. Not because he was famous, but because, finally, they understood. The power of presence. The strength of silence. The beauty of kindness when no one expects it. Linda stood in place for a moment longer, holding the card in her hand like a treasure. The girl who had spoken to Keanu earlier approached her quietly. Was that really him? Linda smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. Yes. And he's exactly who the world hopes he is. The truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it stands in silence until the world is ready to listen. The atmosphere at Gate 47 was different now, not louder, just heavier. Like everyone was holding their breath but didn't know why. The security guards who had once stood tall and ready now lingered off to the side, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch. Keanu remained seated, calm, still, but something in the air had shifted. The teenage girl from earlier was scrolling through her phone. Her eyes widened as she gasped. "Dad," she whispered, nudging him. "Look at this." He took her phone. On the screen was a video. The video, it had already made its way online. Someone had filmed the confrontation between Keanu and the woman, and now it was everywhere. Comments were flooding in. "That's really Keanu. Look how gentle he is. The way he handled that class? We don't deserve this man." A nearby woman whispered, "It's all over social media. People are freaking out." "I knew it was him," someone else said. "Nobody else acts like that." Then, as if timed by fate, a voice rang out from across the terminal. "Wait, are you saying that really is Keanu Reeves?" Everyone turned. A young man in a business suit had just come from another gate. He walked closer, staring at Keanu with disbelief. "I thought you were just some guy." "Man, I'm sorry." Keanu looked up and nodded with a soft smile. "It's all right." That simple confirmation caused a ripple through the crowd. People gasped. Others covered their mouths. The woman in the red suit, who had been silently sitting far away now, stood again, face pale, frozen in place. She blinked fast, as if trying to reset everything that had happened in the last hour. You really are him?" she asked, voice trembling. Keanu stood slowly. He didn't move aggressively, just enough to meet her eyes with quiet dignity. "I am," he said. The woman's lips parted, but no words came. Her mouth opened again, still. Nothing. Finally, she swallowed hard and said, I didn't know." Keanu nodded. "That's the point." She furrowed her brow. "What do you mean?" "I didn't look like someone important," he said softly. "So you treated me like I wasn't." There was no anger in his tone, no bitterness, only truth, clear and simple. The woman looked around. Dozens of eyes were on her now. The confidence she once carried like a weapon had crumbled. "I didn't mean," she tried again. "But you did," Keanu said gently. "Because that's how you speak to people who can't push back." Someone in the crowd said quietly, "He's right." The woman looked down, her voice now barely a whisper. "I thought you were just someone trying to bother me." "I wasn't," Keanu said. "I was trying to help." A long pause, then he added, "But I forgive you." Gasps echoed softly. Even the security guards exchanged surprised glances. "You forgive me?" she asked, voice cracking. Keanu nodded. "Holding on to anger doesn't help anyone. Not me, not you." The crowd seemed to breathe as one, shoulders softened, eyes misted. Something sacred was happening, not because a movie star was speaking, but because a man was showing what grace truly looked like. A boy in the crowd turned to his mother. "Why is he being nice to her?" The mother knelt and whispered, "Because being kind is never about who deserves it." Keanu stepped closer to the woman, his voice low but steady. "You can walk away from this and forget it ever happened. Or, you can remember it and treat the next nobody better than you did today." The woman nodded slowly, her mascara slightly smudged now. "I will," she said. "I promise I will." She turned and walked toward the exit. Not proudly, not in shame, just human again. Keanu watched her go, then turned back to the crowd. "Didn't ask for this attention," he said, and I won't pretend I'm perfect. I've made mistakes. But one thing I've learned, kindness costs nothing, and it changes everything. No one clapped, not because they didn't want to but because silence said more. The message had landed deep. A child reached out and offered Keanu a piece of candy. He smiled and accepted it. The teenage girl stepped forward again. Thank you for not yelling. That's what made everyone stop. Keanu smiled. Anger is loud, but peace is powerful. She nodded, wiping a tear. A flight attendant walked up, unsure how to break the moment. Mr. Reeves, we're ready to pre-board you if you'd like. He looked around at the gathered crowd. Then, at the janitor's cart, still sitting unattended. At Linda, who stood near a column, clutching the silver card he had given her. At the silence, still hanging like a blessing. I think I'll wait a little longer. He said softly. The attendant nodded and stepped away. A reporter who had rushed in whispered to his cameraman, "Don't film. Just listen." No one had asked for this moment. No one had planned it. But in a world where stories often end in shouting, this one had paused in peace. And somehow, it was louder than all the noise. Asterisk, one act of grace can echo louder than a million angry voices. By the time the next boarding announcement played overhead, Gate 47 had become something more than just a place to wait. It was a memory in the making, a quiet revolution born not from outrage, but from humility. Keanu remained seated, peaceful as ever, sipping from the bottle Linda had given him. Around him, people whispered less, and watched more. Really watched. Screens lit up everywhere, buzzing with alerts that the video was now viral. Over 1.4 million views, and rising fast. Dozens of clips, from different angles. The confrontation, the apology, the forgiveness. People weren't just sharing it, they were talking about why it mattered. He never raised his voice. This is how you use influence. A masterclass in grace. Protect this man, at all costs. At a nearby news desk inside the terminal, a journalist frantically typed out a draft, titled, Humility in a Hoodie. Keanu Reeves silently teaches the world a lesson at Gate 47. Airline executives were already on calls. The security footage had confirmed everything. The woman's accusations, Marcus's calm, Linda's kindness, Keanu's silence, and now, the world was watching them all. But it wasn't just praise, it was consequences. At the janitor's lounge, in the back hallway, Marcus sat alone, staring at the floor. He had been written up. Again, he told himself it didn't matter. That his record was already marked. That kindness never really paid off. That the right thing was rarely the rewarded thing. The door creaked. His supervisor stepped in, holding a clipboard. Marcus, something's happened. I know, he said flatly. I embarrassed the company. No, the man said, voice lower than usual. You're trending. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Trending. You're in the video. With him the way you stood up, people are calling you the brave janitor. Some are saying you should be Employee of the Year. Marcus blinked. I didn't mean to be seen. I just did what felt right. The supervisor scratched his head. Yeah, well, apparently that's rare enough to go viral now. He handed Marcus a letter. Corporate's reversing the write-up, and they want to talk to you about something more permanent. Marcus opened the letter slowly, a formal apology, and an invitation to interview for a supervisory position. His hands trembled. Not from pride, from disbelief. Keanu had promised he wouldn't forget, and he hadn't. Across the terminal, Linda was still processing the silver card in her pocket. Her supervisor had vanished after Keanu's quiet call-out, and now, another woman, representative from Airport H, arrived. Her gently. Linda, right. She nodded. I just came from your station, the woman said. I saw your name in the video. Linda braced herself for punishment. For more disappointment. But the woman continued, you're being offered reassignment. Less physical work, same pay, more flexible hours, and someone sent this for you. She handed Linda an envelope. Inside was a note. You believed in words before the world believed in yours. Don't stop writing. The world needs your voice. Tears filled her eyes. She clutched the envelope to her chest and whispered, "Thank you." At gate 47, the crowd remained even, as most flights had boarded. Something held them there. Maybe curiosity, maybe awe, maybe hope. A little boy approached Keanu quietly. He wore a plastic superhero mask. "Are you a real hero?" he asked. Keanu smiled. "Only when I remember to be." The boy looked thoughtful, then offered him a crumpled sticker. "Here, it makes you stronger." Keanu took it like it was gold. "I'll treasure it." A few feet away, the rich woman sat alone, watching it all unfold. She scrolled through her phone. Every post about the incident had thousands of likes and comments. I hope the woman learns from this. It's not too late to become better. She represents too many of us. Her hands trembled. She looked around. No one was mocking her. No one was laughing. But no one was excusing her either. Just then, a woman sat beside her. It was Linda. "I used to be angry like you," Linda said gently. The woman didn't respond. Linda continued, "But it's heavier than people think, carrying that bitterness everywhere." She looked up slowly. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to." "I know," Linda said, "but now you do." There was no judgment in her voice, just truth. "Do you think people will ever forget?" the woman asked. Linda shrugged. "Maybe not, but what you do next, that's what they'll remember most." Meanwhile, airport PR teams were in overdrive, but Keanu had refused all press, all interviews, all offers for exclusive statements. He had made one request: no stage, no spotlight. Just let the story speak. Still, the world was listening. Within hours, major outlets ran the headlines. Kindness, at 30,000 feet. Keanu turns terminal into a lesson on humanity. What happened at gate 47 will restore your faith in people. Not a movie scene, just a real hero in a hoodie. Even celebrities began to repost the clip. A musician wrote, "There's a reason everyone loves this man. This is why." A former co-star tweeted, "That's exactly who he is, off camera. Always has been." But through it all, Keanu stayed silent. He just sat at gate 47. Now peaceful again, legs crossed, arms resting on his backpack. He didn't look like a millionaire or a movie star. He looked like a man who had made peace with his past and had quietly passed it forward. As the next flight began boarding, a passenger paused beside him. "You could have left after everything. Why did you stay?" Keanu looked up. "Because sometimes the moment matters more than the destination." The man nodded slowly. "Well, thank you." Keanu gave a small smile. "Thank Marcus. Thank Linda. I was just a witness." The boarding doors opened wide, but most people weren't ready to move on just yet, because this wasn't just a viral moment, it was a mirror, and in it, people saw not just who Keanu was, but who they could be. Sometimes the greatest rewards come wrapped in silence. The sun had started to shift across the massive airport windows, casting long golden beams over gate 47. The crowd had thinned slightly, but a small cluster of people still lingered near Bennett for their flights. But for something rarer. For once, time was not measured in minutes or delays. It was measured in moments of meaning. Keanu stood slowly, stretching gently. His movements were deliberate, quiet, not dramatic. Not for attention. Just peaceful. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small envelope, placing it gently on the seat he'd occupied most of the morning. No one noticed yet. He didn't want them to, not yet. Across the terminal, Marcus approached nervously. His uniform still had smudges from the floorwork, but his eyes shone differently now. A quiet dignity had returned to his posture. "Mr. Reeves," he said softly. Keanu turned and smiled. "Marcus, I wanted to say thank you, not just for standing up for me, but for remembering." Keanu nodded. "You didn't just clean floors today, you stood for something, and people saw it." Marcus swallowed. "They offered me a supervisor interview. I've never even thought of myself like that." Keanu chuckled. Maybe it's time you do. Marcus hesitated. Why did you defend me? You didn't even know me. Keanu paused, then answered, because I was you years ago. I was the kid no one heard. The man people ignored. And someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. It was the original airport report about Marcus's write-up. Keanu handed it to him. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Never let the way someone treats you define who you are. Marcus's eyes filled. I'll never forget this. You don't need to, Keanu said. You just need to pass it on. They shook hands, one firm, one trembling dot. As Marcus walked away, Keanu turned his gaze toward the janitor's station. Linda was finishing her shift, pushing the cart slowly. The silver card was still tucked into her front pocket like a badge of courage. He walked toward her quietly. She noticed him and smiled. You sure know how to make a scene, she teased. Gently, he chuckled. I was aiming for peace, not performance. Well, you nailed both. He handed her a manila envelope. For you. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter and a printed email. The letter read, Linda, enclosed is a publishing contract. A friend of mine runs a small press. I told her about your writing. She wants to read more. Real voices matter. Yours is one of them. You won't need to clean windows much longer. Unless you still like the sparkle. Linda stared at it, mouth open. You didn't have to. I didn't, but I wanted to. She looked at the email reel, official, welcoming her to submit her short stories for a compilation. Her name would be on the cover. Tears fell. Not the kind born of shock. The kind born from being seen. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You already did, Keanu replied. You sat beside someone when no one else would. She smiled. Promise me you'll keep showing up like this. Quiet, but world-changing. I promise nothing, he said with a wink, but I tend to show up when kindness is needed. As Linda returned to her cart lighter than ever, a small child tugged on Keanu's jacket. It was the same boy with the superhero mask. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. Why didn't you get mad when she yelled at you? Keanu knelt, because her yelling didn't change who I am. It just showed who she was. The boy looked confused but nodded slowly. My mum says yelling doesn't fix anything. She's right, Keanu said. The boy smiled, then ran back to his mother. Just then, the rich woman stepped forward again, slower, smaller. She stood in front of Keanu, eyes down. I don't expect forgiveness, she said quietly. But I needed to try. You already apologized, he said gently. Yes, she said. But this is different. I saw what you did for them. For Marcus. For that cleaning lady. And I realized I've never done anything like that in my whole life. Keanu didn't respond. She continued. I spent so much time building walls around myself, money, power, appearance, thinking that's what makes me important. But today, I saw what true strength looks like. He waited. She took a shaky breath. It looks like grace. Like silence when you could scream. Like lifting others when no one's watching. Keanu finally spoke. Then maybe this wasn't about what happened to me. Maybe it was about what happened inside you. She nodded slowly, her voice cracking. Can I ask one more thing? He raised an eyebrow. Sure, can I help them too? Marcus, Linda. Maybe even support her publishing dream. Keanu smiled. That's not a question for me, that's for you. She looked away, then back. Then I say yes. He nodded once. Then your next chapter starts now. As she turned and walked away, no applause followed. No grand celebration, but something far more powerful had occurred. A heart had shifted. A soul had softened. Back at the gate, a cleaning crew arrived for final inspection. One of them picked up the envelope Keanu had left on the chair earlier. He opened it. Inside was a check signed, with a note, to be filled out by the one who knows who needs it most. A witness from gate 47. The cleaner looked around. Keanu was gone. No cameras, no announcement, Just an empty chair, and a world now changed. Kindness doesn't need a stage, it just needs to show up. The terminal slowly returned to its routine. Gate numbers were called, luggage rolled across the floors, and announcements echoed once again without much notice. But at Gate 47, something remained, not the crowd, not the cameras, but the feeling. The kind you couldn't explain with words, only with a breath held a little longer. A silence that felt full, not empty. Keanu Reeves was no longer there, at least, not physically. He had quietly boarded his flight. No fanfare, no final wave. No one even saw which gate he left from, but his presence remained like sunlight after a storm. Marcus sat in the break room, still staring at the promotion letter in his hands. He'd been offered a full-time supervisor position with benefits. It didn't feel real. Not yet. But what did feel real was the respect for the first time in his life. He wasn't just a background character in someone else's day. He had been seen. He opened his phone and stared at a text message draft he hadn't sent yet. "Mum, I stood up for someone today, and someone stood up for me." He hit send, then smiled. Linda, meanwhile, sat outside the terminal on a metal bench. Her shift had ended early, but she didn't want to leave just yet. On her lap was a worn notebook, the same one she'd kept hidden for years. Now it was open, pages fluttering gently in the breeze. She wrote, "It wasn't the fame that made him powerful. It was his silence in the face of cruelty, his calm in the storm, his choice to lift instead of strike." She paused, tapped the pen gently, then added, "If kindness could wear boots and a hoodie, it would look just like him." Her eyes welled with tears again, but this time, they weren't heavy. They were light, inside the terminal. The little boy with the superhero mask clutched something tight in his fist. The sticker Keanu had returned to him before boarding. But now, written on the back in neat, careful handwriting, were the words, "Be the hero you gave to me." He showed it to his mum. She pulled him into a hug and whispered, "He gave you more than a sticker." The boy smiled. "He gave me my superpower." The woman in red Samantha stood near a coffee stand, still holding the paper cup from earlier that had long gone cold. She wasn't checking her phone anymore. She wasn't brushing her hair back to appear important. She was just thinking about who she had been when she walked into that terminal and who she was now. She had already called her assistant and asked to cancel 2 meetings that didn't really matter. She'd told her driver she'd be late, and she had emailed Linda asking for the name of the publisher, Keanu. Mentioned not to publish something, to invest in stories that deserved to be told. And now, she reached into her bag, pulled out her own notebook, barely used, and began to write. "Today, I yelled at a man who touched my bag, but what he really touched was my heart." She sighed. "I don't want to be remembered for what I said," she whispered. "I want to be remembered for what I chose to change." Back at Gate 47, a cleaning staff member doing a final pass noticed the silver sticker left behind on a bench. It read, "Kindness doesn't need a name, it just needs a heart." No signature, no logo. Just that. He placed it gently on the corner of his cart, not wanting to throw it away. Some things aren't trash. Some things are reminders. As the hours passed, the story spread far beyond the airport. News channels picked it up, not because it was scandalous, but because it was healing. Talk shows discussed it. Teachers showed it in classrooms. Parents used it to explain compassion to their kids. The phrase, Gate 47, began trending not as a place, but as a symbol. A moment in time when the world saw what dignity looked like. Memes, posts, handwritten signs in airports began to appear. You never know who you're talking to. Everyone deserves respect even when no one's watching. What would you do if the stranger in front of you was Keanu Reeves? But more importantly, people started changing. Not big dramatic shifts, small ones. Holding doors. Apologizing faster. Saying thank you more. Noticing janitors, attendants, children, the elderly. And as the days passed, the phrase Gate 47 stopped being about Keanu Reeves. It became about all of us. Weeks later, At a small bookshop in Oregon, a modest poetry collection sat on a shelf. Near the entrance, its cover was simple white background, soft gray title. The Quiet Voices by Linda M. Clark. The dedication read, "To the stranger, who reminded me my words matter. To Marcus, who showed courage in silence. To Samantha, who chose to become more than a moment. And to the man in the hoodie, at gate 47. Thank you for seeing us." Inside the book was a poem that readers everywhere would share for years. Gate 47, it wasn't the place. It wasn't the time, it was the pause between noise, the breath before blame, the look that said, "I see you," when no one else would. Kindness sat in silence, and the world finally listened. Some said it was a miracle. Some called it good PR. But those who had been there, who had really felt it, knew the truth. There was no campaign, no performance, no brand, just one man, one moment, one choice. And in that, he left the world just a little softer, just a little kinder, not by shouting, not by scolding, but by quietly living what he hoped we'd all become. Final line, a woman paused at gate 47 weeks later and asked an attendant, "Is this where that famous thing happened?" The attendant smiled and answered, "This isn't just a gate anymore. It's a reminder that one gentle heart can open thousands."